the first time the HOA threatened my father's service dog. They gave us 72 hours to remove him from our home, not from the clubhouse, not from the pool area, not from some shared courtyard, from our own living room. The letter was taped to our front door in a white envelope, with the HOA logo printed at the top. As if that little blue seal gave them the power to erase a veteran-s medical accommodation with one signature. It said Ranger, my dad's service dog, had been classified as an unauthorized animal under a newly approved pet restriction. It claimed the board had voted unanimously. It warned us that if Ranger was still on the property after 3 days, we would be fined $500 a day until we complied. My father read the letter twice without saying a word. He had survived things overseas that he still would not talk about, but that piece of paper made his hands shake so badly. Ranger pressed his body against his knee before I could even move. That was what Ranger did. He noticed the panic before the rest of us did. He brought my dad back before the room disappeared on him. But according to our HOA president, a woman, everyone in the neighborhood privately called Karen, Ranger was just a large dog ruining the appearance of the community. What she did not know was that our doorbell camera had caught everything. It caught her walking up to our porch with the letter. It caught her standing beside another board member near our front steps. And it caught the moment she admitted, in her own careless little voice, that there had never been a real board vote at all. That recording turned a fake HOA violation into a legal nightmare. By the end of it, every fine was canceled. The management company opened an investigation, and Karen lost the position she had been using to bully half the neighborhood. So before you decide whether an HOA can really go that far, listen to what happened and tell me in the comments what you would have done if someone tried to take away the one thing keeping your parents steady. Because this was not about a dog. This was about power, paperwork, and the one camera Karen forgot was watching. Before Karen turned our front porch into evidence, our house was the quietest place on Maple Creek Lane. It was a single-story home with faded brick, a small front lawn, and a porch my father had rebuilt with his own hands after his knees got too bad for roofing work. It was not fancy. It was not the kind of house people put in real estate brochures, but to us, it meant safety. It meant my dad had finally found a place where the nights were not so loud, where the windows faced open sky, and where nobody expected him to explain why certain sounds made him freeze. My father, Daniel Hayes, served 2 tours overseas. When people heard that, they usually imagined medals, folded flags, and patriotic speeches. They did not imagine the other parts. They did not imagine a grown man waking up at 3 in the morning, unable to breathe. They did not imagine him standing in the grocery store aisle with a cart full of food, suddenly trapped by a sound nobody else even noticed. They did not imagine the shame he carried because the war had followed him home in ways no one could see. For years after he came back, my father tried to handle everything alone. He refused help until refusing almost broke him. Then Ranger came into his life. Ranger was a broad-shouldered golden retriever mix with calm eyes and a way of reading my father that felt almost impossible. He knew when Dad's breathing changed. He knew when Dad's hands started to curl into fists. He knew when to lean against his leg, when to block space in a crowd, when to wake him from a nightmare, and when to simply stay close without asking anything from him. Ranger was trained for a job, but to our family, he became something deeper than that. He gave my father back small pieces of the life he thought he had lost forever. Because of Ranger, Dad started taking morning walks again. He started sitting on the porch with coffee. Instead of hiding in the back room, he waved at neighbors. He remembered birthdays. He laughed more often. Quietly at first, then for real. I watched a man who had spent years apologizing for his own pain slowly begin to believe he was allowed to exist in peace. That was why the house mattered so much. It was not just property, it was recovery. Every room held proof that my father was still trying. The hallway had scuff marks from Ranger's paws. The kitchen had a small mat where Ranger waited while Dad made breakfast. The porch had 2 worn spots in the wood, one from Dad's chair and one from Ranger lying beside him every morning like a silent promise. When we moved into the neighborhood, the HOA seemed harmless enough. There were rules about trash cans, mailbox colors, lawn height, and holiday decorations. Annoying, maybe, but manageable. We paid our dues, we kept the yard neat. We filled out forms when they asked for forms. We never tried to be difficult. Most of the neighbors were kind. Some had seen Dad having a hard day and quietly gave him space. Others knew Ranger by name and smiled when they passed. Nobody treated him like a problem. Then Karen Whitmore became HOA president. Karen did not act like she had been elected to manage a neighborhood. She acted like she had been crowned to control it. She walked the sidewalks with a clipboard. She photographed lawns after rainstorms. She sent violation letters for porch chairs facing the wrong direction, and basketball hoops left out 30 minutes too long. She used phrases like community standards and property values the way other people used threats at first. I thought she was just irritating. Then she saw Ranger from that moment on. I noticed the way her eyes followed my father on his walks. I noticed the way she slowed her car near our driveway. I noticed how the HOA newsletters suddenly started mentioning oversized pets, nuisance animals, and uniform enforcement. Nothing used Ranger's name, but every sentence felt pointed at our house. My father tried not to react. He had spent too many years being told to stay calm, to be grateful, to not make other people uncomfortable with what he was carrying. But I saw what it cost him. Every envelope from the HOA made his shoulders tighten. Every time Karen passed our house, Ranger moved closer to his side, and that was the part that made me angry. Karen was not protecting a neighborhood. She was targeting the one thing that helped my father feel safe inside it. So, when that first serious letter arrived, the one claiming the board had voted to remove Ranger, I already knew this was not a misunderstanding. It was a campaign. And if you have ever watched someone you love get bullied by a person hiding behind rules, then you know exactly why. I did not throw that letter away. I saved it. I scanned it. I backed it up. Because somewhere deep down, I knew Karen had finally gone too far. The first violation notice was almost polite, and that somehow made it worse. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, folded inside an HOA envelope with my father's full name printed above the words animal restriction violation. The letter said Ranger had been observed walking through the neighborhood without prior approval from the Architectural and Compliance Committee. It claimed that all animals over a certain size required board review, and that failure to remove an unauthorized animal could result in daily fines. I read it 3 times at the kitchen table, while Ranger rested beside Dad's chair. My father stared at the paper like it had come from some courtroom instead of a woman with a clipboard and too much free time. He kept saying it had to be a mistake. He reminded me that we had already sent the HOA everything they had asked for when we moved in the accommodation paperwork. The Dr. S. letter, the request that Ranger be recognized as a service animal and not treated like an ordinary pet. So I answered calmly. I attached the documents again. I explained that Ranger was not a nuisance animal, not a decorative pet, and not subject to the neighborhood's normal pet restrictions. I asked that all future communication be sent in writing. For 2 days, nothing happened. Then Karen started patrolling our street. At first, she pretended it was casual. She walked past our house slowly in the mornings, holding her phone low near her hip. Then she started stopping across the street when Dad took Ranger outside. She photographed them near the mailbox. She photographed them on the sidewalk. She photographed Ranger lying quietly beside the porch while my father drank coffee. My dad noticed, but he tried to act like he did not. That was one of the hardest parts to watch. He had learned to make himself small around people who made him feel like a problem. He shortened his walks. He stopped going out when Karen's SUV was parked near the corner. He began asking me whether Ranger's vest was visible enough, whether we should carry extra copies of the paperwork, whether the neighbors were complaining. No neighbors were complaining. Karen was manufacturing a case. The second notice arrived 4 days later. This one was sharper. It accused Ranger of creating a visual disturbance and causing concern among residents. It said the HOA had received multiple complaints. Though it did not name a single person, it warned that the matter would be escalated to a board hearing if we failed to comply that night. Dad barely touched his dinner. Ranger sat pressed against his leg under the table, alert and still, watching every small change in his breathing. I could see the old fear coming back into the room, the kind that did not need a battlefield to find him. It only needed a threat, a deadline, and someone in authority telling him he was not allowed to feel safe. I wanted to march down to Karen's house. I wanted to bang on her door and ask what kind of person looked at a veteran. and decided his medical support was an eyesore. But I knew that was exactly what she wanted. She wanted us emotional. She wanted us loud. She wanted a reason to write unstable, aggressive, and non-compliant in some HOA file. So I stayed quiet. Then came the third letter. It was taped to our front door just after lunch on a Friday, placed directly beneath the doorbell camera. This one was not a warning. It was an order. According to the letter, the HOA board had held an emergency vote and unanimously determined that Ranger violated the community animals policy. We had 72 hours to remove him from the property. After that, the fines would begin at $500 per day. Continued refusal could result in legal action, collection fees, and suspension of community privileges. My father read the first paragraph and sat down before he reached the second. I will never forget his face. It was not anger. Anger would have been easier. It was humiliation. It was a man who had given years of his body and mind to service, now being told by a neighborhood board that the dog helping him survive ordinary life had to disappear because it made someone uncomfortable. Ranger climbed onto the floor in front of him and placed his head against Dad's knee. Dad rested one hand on Ranger's neck, and for a few seconds, neither of them moved. That was when Karen came back. She did not knock like a neighbor. She stood on our porch like someone delivering a verdict through the doorbell camera. I watched her smooth the front of her blouse, glance toward the street, and lift her chin as if the entire neighborhood were her courtroom. She announced that the board had already made its decision, that the matter was closed, and that my father would not receive special treatment just because he had paperwork. I did not open the door. I watched from inside, while Dad sat in the living room, trying to steady his breathing. Ranger had moved between him and the front hallway, exactly the way he had been trained to do. Karen kept talking at the door, her voice carrying through the wood. She said the community had standards. She said rules had to apply equally. She said allowing one exception would open the door to everyone abusing the system. Then she said something that made my stomach go cold. She said that if Ranger was not gone by Monday morning, the HOA would make sure every fine, every legal fee, and every enforcement cost landed on my father's account. That was not policy enforcement. That was intimidation. And the strangest part was how confident she sounded. She truly believed a stamped envelope and the word board gave her unlimited power over our home. She believed my father would fold because he was tired. She believed I would panic because the numbers looked scary. She believed nobody would question whether the board vote had actually happened. But Karen had made one mistake. She stood too close to the doorbell camera. After she finished performing for our front door, another board member walked up from the driveway. He looked uncomfortable, the way people look when they know something is wrong, but do not want to be the first person to say it. Karen lowered her voice, but not enough. The camera still caught the exchange. It caught her saying the decision had to look official. It caught her brushing off the need for proper minutes. It caught the little laugh she gave when she suggested that once the fines started, my family would give up. I did not understand the full importance of that moment yet. I only knew I had just watched someone threaten my father's peace, his home, and the one living creature trained to keep him grounded, so I saved the clip. Then I saved it again in 3 different places. And before you hear what happened next, remember this. When someone in power is too confident, they stop being careful. Karen thought the fight was over when she taped that letter to our door. In reality, that was the exact moment she handed us the proof that would bring her down. I did not confront Karen that night. That was the part that surprised even me, because every instinct in my body wanted to storm across the street, hold up my phone, and let her know she had been recorded. I wanted to watch the confidence drain out of her face. I wanted her to understand that she had not just bullied a veteran. She had been careless enough to document herself doing it. But anger makes people sloppy. Karen was already sloppy. I could not afford to be. So I sat at the kitchen table after my father went to bed, opened my laptop, and started building a file. Not a folder full of emotions, a real evidence file. I named it Ranger HOA Evidence, then created subfolders for notices, emails, camera footage, medical accommodation, HOA rules, board records, and timeline. First, I downloaded the doorbell camera clip. Then I downloaded the longer version. Not just the part where Karen said the board had voted, but the minutes before and after. I wanted context. I wanted her walking up to the door. I wanted her placing the letter. I wanted the board member arriving. I wanted the part where her voice dropped because she thought privacy came from standing 3 feet away from a camera. Then I backed it up to a cloud drive, then to a thumb drive. Then I emailed a copy to myself. After that, I scanned every HOA notice. We had received the first warning, the second nuisance accusation, the 72-hour removal letter. I saved the envelopes too, because the postmarks and dates mattered. The last one had not even been mailed. Karen had taped it to our door herself, which meant she personally delivered a threat under the HOA's name. Then I went into our email history. I found the original accommodation request we had sent after moving in. I found the Dr. S documentation attached to it. I found the HOA management company S response acknowledging receipt. It did not say Ranger was approved forever in bright red letters, but it did say our request had been received and placed in the property file. More importantly, there was no denial, no request for clarification, no hearing notice, no follow-up, saying the paperwork was incomplete. For months, they had stayed silent. Then Karen became president, and suddenly Ranger became a violation. I opened the HOA bylaws next. I had never read them carefully before because, honestly, nobody moves into a neighborhood dreaming of becoming an expert in board procedure. But that night, I read every page, like my father's peace depended on it, because it did. The bylaws were boring, repetitive, and buried in language that sounded official enough to scare people away. But the more I read, the clearer the problem became. The board could not just invent an emergency vote whenever Karen wanted something done. They needed notice. They needed quorum. They needed meeting minutes. They needed records. They needed an actual decision made by the board, not a letter signed by one person who enjoyed being feared. I checked the HOA website. No emergency meeting notice. I checked the community calendar. Nothing. I checked the latest board minutes. The most recent posted meeting had been about landscaping costs, parking reminders, and a broken sprinkler near the entrance sign. There was not one word about Ranger, service animals, disability accommodations, or an emergency pet restriction vote. That was the first crack. The next morning, I started calling people, not aggressively, not emotionally. I kept my voice calm and asked simple questions. I called the HOA management company and requested the minutes from the emergency meeting referenced in the letter. The woman on the phone sounded confused and asked me for the date of the meeting. I told her the letter did not list one. She paused long enough for me to hear papers moving on her desk, then said she would have to check. That pause told me more than any answer. Then I emailed the request so there would be a written record. I asked for the meeting notice, agenda, attendance record, vote count, minutes, and the specific rule they claimed allowed them to remove a service animal from a private home with 72 hours notice. I kept the tone polite. I thanked them for their time. I peed myself. I saved the sent email as a PDF that afternoon. I spoke to a neighbor named Mr. Alvarez, who had served on the board before Karen took over. He was the kind of man who trimmed his hedges perfectly but still waved at every kid on a bicycle. He did not like drama, which meant when he looked uncomfortable. I paid attention. He told me he had not attended any emergency meeting. He had not received notice of one either. He had seen a message from Karen in the board group chat saying she was handling the Ranger situation, but he had never voted to remove the dog. He said another board member had questioned whether they could legally do that, and Karen had brushed it off as an enforcement matter. That was the second crack. By then, I was not just angry anymore. I was focused. I made a timeline from the day Karen first photographed my father to the day she taped the removal notice to our door. I matched every HOA letter to every camera clip. I listed every time Ranger had been called unauthorized, oversized, a nuisance, or a violation. Then, I placed those claims beside the accommodation paperwork they already had in their own file, and the picture that formed was ugly. Karen had not discovered a violation. She had chosen a target. She had taken a service dog, recategorized him as a pet, invented complaints, referenced a board vote nobody could prove, and used daily fines to pressure a disabled veteran into giving up. Before I closed the laptop that night, I replayed the doorbell clip one more time. Karen's voice was still clear enough to make my stomach tighten. She had been so sure no one would check the minutes, so sure we would panic, so sure my father would rather surrender then fight another battle. That was when I realized the real fight was not going to happen on our porch. It was going to happen in records, emails, bylaws, and evidence. So if you are listening to this and you have ever received a threatening letter from an HOA, do not throw it away. Save it, scan it, check the rule they are quoting, ask for the meeting minutes, because sometimes the serious piece of paper is only scary until you ask them to prove it. And Karen S. proof was already falling apart. The next morning, I called an attorney, not because I wanted to sue everyone in sight, not because I wanted money. I called because I needed someone who understood the difference between an HOA rule and an HOA bluff. By that point, Karen had created enough fear in our house that my father was asking whether moving would be easier than fighting. That was the moment I knew I could not handle it alone. The attorney's name was Melissa Grant, and she had handled HOA disputes, disability accommodation cases, and fair housing complaints for years. I expected her to sound rushed, maybe skeptical, maybe annoyed that I was just another homeowner upset about a pet rule. Instead, she listened quietly while I explained everything from the first notice to the 72-hour demand. Then I sent her the documents, the accommodation request, the old email from the management company, the 3 violation letters, the bylaws, the screenshots from the HOA website showing no emergency meeting notice, the community calendar with nothing listed, the latest posted minutes that never mentioned Ranger, and finally, the doorbell camera clip. She watched it while I stayed on the phone. For almost a full minute after the clip ended, she said nothing. That silence scared me more than any reaction would have. Then she said the issue was much bigger than a dog. According to her, Karen had made at least 3 serious mistakes. First, she had treated a service animal like an ordinary pet after the HOA had already received accommodation paperwork. Second, she had threatened daily fines without showing a valid board action, hearing process, or documented rule violation. And third, if the clip meant what it appeared to mean, Karen may have knowingly represented a fake board vote as an official HOA decision. That last part changed everything. Up until then, Karen had been acting like the person with power. She had the letterhead, she had the title, she had the confidence of someone used to people backing down the second legal-looking language appeared in their mailbox. But the attorney explained that HOA authority did not come from attitude. It came from governing documents, proper procedure, recorded decisions, and lawful enforcement. Karen had skipped the part where power had to be real. Melissa told me not to contact Karen directly. She told me not to post the video online, no matter how tempting it felt. She told me to stop answering phone calls from the HOA and keep everything in writing. Then she prepared a demand letter. That letter was the first time the pressure moved off our kitchen table and landed where it belonged. It was addressed to the HOA board, the management company, and Karen in her official capacity as president. It demanded immediate suspension of all fines related to Ranger. It demanded written confirmation that no removal action would be taken against my father's service dog. It demanded preservation of all emails, text messages, board chat logs, violation records, meeting notices, agendas, minutes, and votes connected to the matter. And then it asked the question Karen should have feared from the beginning. Provide the record of the emergency board vote. Not a summary, not Karen's personal explanation, not another threatening letter, the record, the notice, the agenda, the attendance, the quorum, the motion, the vote count, the minutes. That was the moment the fake wall started to collapse. The management company responded within 2 business days, and the tone was completely different from the violation notices. There were no bold deadlines, no threats of daily fines, no language about community standards, just a careful, nervous email saying they were reviewing the matter and had temporarily paused enforcement pending verification of board records. Pending verification. Those 2 words told me they could not find what Karen claimed existed. A few days later, Melissa received a second response. The management company admitted they had no posted notice for an emergency meeting on the date referenced by the violation letter. They had no approved minutes reflecting a vote to remove Ranger. They had no attendance record showing quorum. They had no documentation that the full board had unanimously approved the enforcement action. They tried to soften it. Of course, they called it a procedural irregularity, They said there may have been confusion between board discussion and formal action. They said the association was still gathering information, but I knew what that meant. There had been no vote. Karen had taken a personal vendetta, dressed it in HOA letterhead, and sent it to a disabled veteran as if the entire board had spoken. When I told my father, he did not look relieved at first. He looked exhausted. People think being proven right feels good immediately, but sometimes it just confirms how badly someone tried to hurt you. He sat on the porch with Ranger beside him, holding the attorney's letter in both hands, and kept staring at the line where the management company admitted there were no minutes. That was the line that gave him his breath back. For the first time in weeks, Dad walked Ranger all the way to the end of the block. Karen's SUV was in her driveway, but she did not come outside. She did not take pictures. She did not wave her clipboard. She stayed behind her curtains, like the rules had suddenly become dangerous to her. And honestly, that was when I understood something important. Bullies who hide behind paperwork are terrified of paperwork when it starts working against them. The doorbell camera had exposed her words. The bylaws exposed her process. The missing minutes exposed her lie. And the attorney's demand letter turned all of it into a record Karen could not laugh off on somebody else's porch. Before this happened, I thought evidence meant catching one dramatic moment on video. But evidence was more than that. It was the timeline, the emails, the saved envelopes, the missing meeting notice, the policy they quoted incorrectly, the silence where an official record should have been. So if you are hearing this and thinking your HOA would never go that far, I hope you are right. But save your notices anyway. Keep your emails. Download your camera clips before they expire. Because Karen did not lose control when she was caught being cruel. She lost control when we could prove she had no authority to be cruel in the first place. And once that became clear, the next step was no longer about convincing Karen. It was about making the entire neighborhood see what she had done. The emergency HOA meeting was announced 3 days after the management company admitted there were no minutes. That alone told me they were scared. For weeks, Karen N had acted like she was the neighborhood, the board, the rules, and the final word. But now, the same management company that had once forwarded her violation letters was suddenly using careful language. The meeting notice said the board would address concerns regarding enforcement procedure, disability accommodation handling, and unauthorized communication sent under association authority. They did not write Karen's name. They did not have to by the time my father and I walked into the clubhouse. That evening, half the neighborhood was already there. Some people looked curious. Some looked angry. Some looked embarrassed, like they had ignored Karen's behavior for years because it had never been aimed at them. Ranger walked beside my father in his vest, calm and steady, while Dad held the leash with one hand and the edge of the printed attorney letter with the other. Karen was sitting at the front table, but she did not look like the woman who had stood on our porch. No clipboard, no sharp little smile, no loud voice carrying across the room. She kept shuffling papers that by then everyone knew were not the board minutes. Our attorney, Melissa, did not make a speech. At first, she simply handed the management representative a packet. Inside were copies of the violation letters, the accommodation request, the email acknowledging receipt, the HOA bylaws, the missing meeting records request, and a transcript of the doorbell camera recording. Every page had dates. Every claim had a matching document. Every threat Karen made was tied to something she could no longer deny. That was when the room changed. This was no longer neighborhood gossip. It was no longer Karen claiming she was just enforcing standards. It was a documented case file showing that an HOA president had used fake authority to threaten a disabled veteran over his service dog. The management representative cleared his throat and confirmed that enforcement against Ranger had been suspended. He confirmed there was no verified record of a valid emergency board vote. He confirmed there was no approved motion ordering Ranger's removal. He also confirmed that the association's legal counsel had advised the board to preserve all communications related to the matter. Karen tried to interrupt. For the first time since I had known her, nobody let her control the room. Residents started asking questions from every side. Who authorized the letter? Why did it say unanimous vote if no vote happened? How many other violation notices had been sent this way? Had Karen used the HOA letterhead before without approval? Why was a Veteran S service animal treated like a pet restriction problem after paperwork had already been submitted? Karen kept saying there had been discussions, that the board had understood her position, that she was protecting the community from abuse of exceptions, but every time she tried to turn the issue back to Ranger, Melissa pulled it back to records. Where was the notice? Where was the agenda? Where was the quorum? Where was the vote? Where were the minutes? That was the part Karen could not talk her way around. She had built her entire threat on a board action that did not exist. Then Melissa asked the management company to play the doorbell clip. The clubhouse went silent. Everyone heard Karen's voice. Everyone heard her say the decision had to look official. Everyone heard her joke that they did not need a real vote if nobody checked the minutes. Everyone heard the laugh. My father did not look at Karen while it played. He looked down at Ranger, who was sitting against his leg exactly the way he had sat through every panic attack, every sleepless night, every hard morning. And when the recording ended, Dad stood up slowly. He did not yell. He did not insult her. He just told the room that Ranger was not a loophole, not a nuisance, and not a trick to avoid neighborhood rules. Ranger was the reason he could walk into that room at all. Nobody clapped right away. It was too heavy for that. But one by one, people started nodding. Then someone in the back said the board needed to remove Karen from any enforcement authority immediately. Another resident demanded an audit of recent fines. A third asked whether the HOA's insurance carrier had been notified, because if Karen had exposed the association to a discrimination claim, every homeowner could end up paying for it. That was when Karen finally understood the truth. She had not just picked a fight with my family. She had put the entire HOA at risk. By the end of the meeting, the board voted to suspend Karen's authority. Pending investigation, the management company agreed in writing that no fines, hearings, or enforcement actions related to Ranger would continue. HOA council requested a settlement discussion, and for the first time in months, my father walked out of that clubhouse without looking over his shoulder. So before you let any board members scare you with official-looking paper, remember what happened in that room. Power is not real just because someone prints it on letterhead. Real authority has records behind it. And when the records are missing, sometimes the whole lie collapses in front of everyone. The emergency HOA meeting was announced 3 days after the management company admitted there were no minutes. That alone told me they were scared. For weeks, Karen had acted like she was the neighborhood, the board, the rules, and the final word. But now the same management company that had once forwarded her violation letters was suddenly using careful language. The meeting notice said the board would address concerns regarding enforcement procedure, disability accommodation handling, and unauthorized communications sent under association authority. They did not write Karen's name. They did not have to by the time my father and I walked into the clubhouse. That evening, half the neighborhood was already there. Some people looked curious. Some looked angry. Some looked embarrassed, like they had ignored Karen's behavior for years because it had never been aimed at them. Ranger walked beside my father in his vest, calm and steady, while Dad held the leash with one hand and the edge of the printed attorney letter with the other. Karen was sitting at the front table, but she did not look like the woman who had stood on our porch. No clipboard, no sharp little smile, no loud voice carrying across the room. She kept shuffling papers that, by then everyone knew were not the board minutes. Our attorney Melissa did not make a speech. At first, she simply handed the management representative a packet. Inside were copies of the violation letters, the accommodation request, the email acknowledging receipt, the HOA bylaws, the missing meeting records request, and a transcript of the doorbell camera recording. Every page had dates. Every claim had a matching document. Every threat Karen made was tied to something she could no longer deny. That was when the room changed. This was no longer neighborhood gossip. It was no longer Karen claiming she was just enforcing standards. It was a documented case file showing that an HOA president had used fake authority to threaten a disabled veteran over his service dog. The management representative cleared his throat and confirmed that enforcement against Ranger had been suspended. He confirmed there was no verified record of a valid emergency board vote. He confirmed there was no approved motion ordering Ranger's removal. He also confirmed that the association's legal counsel had advised the board to preserve all communications related to the matter. Karen tried to interrupt. For the first time since I had known her, nobody let her control the room. Residents started asking questions from every side. Who authorized the letter? Why did it say unanimous vote if no vote happened? How many other violation notices had been sent this way? Had Karen used the HOA letterhead before without approval? Why was a veteran service animal treated like a pet restriction problem after paperwork had already been submitted? Karen kept saying there had been discussions, that the board had understood her position, that she was protecting the community from abusive exceptions. But every time she tried to turn the issue back to Ranger, Melissa pulled it back to records. Where was the notice? Where was the agenda? Where was the quorum? Where was the vote? Where were the minutes? That was the part Karen could not talk her way around. She had built her entire threat on a board action that did not exist. Then Melissa asked the management company to play the doorbell clip. The clubhouse went silent. Everyone heard Karen's voice. Everyone heard her say the decision had to look official. Everyone heard her joke that they did not need a real vote if nobody checked the minutes. Everyone heard the laugh. My father did not look at Karen while it played. He looked down at Ranger, who was sitting against his leg exactly the way he had sat through every panic attack, every sleepless night, every hard morning. And when the recording ended, Dad stood up slowly. He did not yell. He did not insult her. He just told the room that Ranger was not a loophole, not a nuisance, and not a trick to avoid neighborhood rules. Ranger was the reason he could walk into that room at all. Nobody clapped right away. It was too heavy for that. But one by one, people started nodding. Then someone in the back said the board needed to remove Karen from any enforcement authority immediately. Another resident demanded an audit of recent fines. A third asked whether the HOA's insurance carrier had been notified, because if Karen had exposed the association to a discrimination claim, every homeowner could end up paying for it. That was when Karen finally understood the truth. She had not just picked a fight with my family. She had put the entire HOA at risk. By the end of the meeting, the board voted to suspend Karen's authority pending investigation. The management company agreed in writing that no fines, hearings, or enforcement actions related to Ranger would continue. HOA Council requested a settlement discussion, and for the first time in months, my father walked out of that clubhouse without looking over his shoulder. So before you let any board member scare you with official-looking paper, remember what happened in that room. Power is not real just because someone prints it on letterhead. Real authority has records behind it. And when the records are missing, sometimes the whole lie collapses in front of everyone.